Now, more stories, insights, and analysis of Illinois policy and politics. This is Illinois Rising, presented by the Illinois Opportunity Project. Once again, your host, AM 560's Dan Proft.
Dan back with Pat on this edition of Rising. And Pat, we call it the It Could Be Worse donor class. The bipartisan donor class in Chicago mainly, in Illinois generally, that suffers from an affliction of low expectations for what's possible in the city, what's possible in the state. This is the best we can do, Rahm Emanuel. So we got to fold in with Tiny Dancer. This is the best we can do, Bruce Rauner. So we have to select Bruce Rauner over Jeannie Ives in the primary. Well, there's consequences to that, as we're seeing, say, for example, being home to the worst-run state in the country, seeing people flee. Many of these in the quote-unquote donor class, certainly their social circles. But okay, we did a little analysis over at ChicagoCityWire.com and looked at the Venn diagram of former Governor Bruce Rauner and hopefully former Mayor Tiny Dancer. Interesting, because they have this like back and forth public spat now because attacking each other is useful at some level to each one of them. Probably more so Tiny Dancer than Rauner. I'm sure they'll work it all out at the wine club when this is all over. Maybe when it's all over, Tiny Dancer can be like the Rauner's Valerie Jarrett, and when they move to the Amalfi Coast, they'll have a little room for Tiny Dancer. And I mean a little room, physically.
Like a closet. It used to be a closet.
323 campaign donors to Emanuel have also given money to Bruce Rauner. And this is just public records, looking at Illinois State Board of Elections records, and as I said, just bumping them up against one another. Of course, it's the wealthiest families, the transactional, some of whom are transactional donors, some of whom suffer from the soft political bigotry of low expectations I was describing, including some of the wealthiest here, including people who have donated to my PAC, and I make no apologies for that. I'm glad they did. Donated to organizations that we're affiliated with. But I guess the question for, the Ken Griffins and some of the others who I think lean right, as compared to some of the other champagne socialists on this list of donors to both, like Byron Trott, who was a bundler for Obama, who obviously leftist, Eric Lefkowski from Groupon, obviously a leftist. Well, if he's not obviously a leftist, but he is. He's a Democrat. Is, the bipartisan play, because this is the best we can do. And so I don't really need anything from any of the politicians. I'm not contributing money for access other than maybe from a social status point of view. Is that a sensible philanthropic strategy, political philanthropic strategy? How is that going when it's producing what Illinois has become and under whom it has become what it has?
I think in addition to everything you just said, and I'm also grateful to the support that we've received from some of these people, it's cultural like everything else. There's a notion amongst some of these folks that they're only going to support people who are in their circle, right? Their financial circle, their circle of social esteem, right? And someone from the western suburbs who's a house mom does not fit that frame of reference for them, right? We're the champions of the world. We're going to support and nominate other champions of the world because they're the only people who could successfully run a big city or a big state. And I think there's a bias there, sort of a self aggrandizement in terms of who they're supporting.
Yeah, I mean, but you understand that it just repels people, and it leaves conservatives at home. When you see former George W. Bush Treasury Secretary Hank Paulson of Barrington, at least that's where he owns a place. I don't know if he's still technically a Barrington resident. He gave $80,000 to Rauner and $70,000 to Emanuel.
He likes Rauner better by $10,000.
Well, that's one read. Yeah, that's one read on it. maybe that'll level off. It'll equal out.
He had a rough 2008, Hank Paulson, by the way.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, that was a rough time.
Sam Zell, co-president of Sam Zell's Equity Group Investments, I should say, David Helfand. Ronner 55, Emmanuel 135. Reinsdorf, Ronner 58, Emmanuel 77. Morningstar founder Joseph Mansueto, Ronner 205, Emmanuel 200.
And like you said, most of these people are insulated from the result of politics. They're so wealthy that no matter what happens, they're not, like you said, you're not looking for access or special favors. I mean, they're just insulated from all that.
And they don't do business with the government,
right,
for example. So it doesn't, I mean, it matters in terms of, regulatory regimes and things like that, but they can't really be touched.
It's cultural. It's a cultural thing of who they're associating with. The governor, the mayor. It's cultural.
Well, so do they need to be challenged, though, to be the leaders in turning that culture around? Do people have to stop just, shining their shoes and challenge them a little bit to say, you're civic leaders, you're philanthropic leaders, respect what you've done to contribute to the arts, to contribute to causes that are consistent with your philosophy. Maybe it's time to start doing that exclusively if you want to turn around the culture. Because being, bipartisan in support of combine politics propagates this poisonous political culture that afflicts Illinois. And it's hard to make a case otherwise for them or anybody else.
Yeah, and I think some of them do that. I think some of them do the hard work and look at it. I think there are others that you'll never get to with that argument.